What's going on, boys? Hockey Meta here with our 2020 NHL mock draft. We're going to be focusing primarily on the Senators today with our 3 and 5 picks because, of course, I am a Sens fan. This is a huge draft for us, a massive year. Probably the biggest draft I've ever been actively a Sens fan for. I know the Spezza draft was big for us, but I wasn't really watching too much hockey back then. So this is a big day for us, October 6th. And I've been working on my mock for a few weeks here, just kind of like working at the kinks, kind of which team will take which player, but with a unbiased opinion, a very honest opinion. I'm not going to not pick a player just because I want the Sens to have him at, let's say, 5. I'm going to be honest and just tell you who the best player I think will be for each team, and who I think will not stay on the board past a certain pick. So we're going to jump right into this with our first pick, and it's going to be Alexis Lafreniere. It's no secret, no surprise. I'm not going to go too much into him because it's very obvious why he is the number one overall. He's been scouted since he was like 16. I'm sure TSN, Sportsnet will have the whole history of his whole life. You'll see baby pictures. You'll see his mother, his father. You'll see him in the womb. That's just how Sportsnet does it. So moving on to pick number 2. At pick number 2, this one, it's a bit of a toss-up. There's a lot of controversy between the two of them, mostly because of LA's need, right? So LA's last few years, they have picked up very valuable centers like Turcotte, Akil Thomas, Erasmus Kupari, just to name a few. So they do have centers in the pipeline, and that's with a Kopitar who's still producing at a pretty good rate, I'd say. Like, he's not regressing just yet. And with him and Doughty still on the team, kind of doing their thing, the Kings aren't that far out of it. I see them kind of like the Hawks, where they're in this somewhat rebuild, but the team's still competitive kind of phase. And I don't think they're too far off being back in the mix. And for this reason, I do think they take Tim Stützle because he is the elite winger who can also play center. But he just brings a lot to the team that could be valued today, right? And when you watch his highlights, like he's for sure an elite player. Like, there's no doubt. One of the criticisms I've seen on him is that he uses the international ice to like kind of work with his space, and like he wouldn't have the same space in the North American leagues. But I don't think it would be too much of an adjustment for him. Just on the eye test, like, he is actually incredible. One of the best playmakers, one of the best creative players in this draft. It reminds me of Datsuk in the sense that, like, some of the things he does, you're just like you're so impressed. You're just like, wow, like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like, he can make the Kings a lot better today. And there is that German connection. I know I didn't want to use the rumors too much to solidify a pick, right? You can't be like, oh, well, the head coach was born in Germany, so of course he's going to go there because he's German. Like, it's not a fact every time. So I do think there's enough there for Stützle to be the second overall talent. Like, I do think he's the second best player in the draft today, right? I think Quinton Byfield will be there, but I don't know when. At number 3, and this will be the most important pick in Sens franchise history, like, period. I know there's Diago and Yashin and whatever, but they didn't impact the franchise the same way a player who will play their whole career or the majority of their prime on the team will. And Quinton Byfield is the obvious pick. We all know it was either Stützle or Byfield, and I think it will be Byfield. And like, wow, what luck, first of all, because for the LA Kings to move up to 2, to have the center depth and the German connection and need for Stützle for the elite winger, like, such a blessing for Ottawa, because if you think about it, if Anaheim has the spot, you know, like, they're probably taking Byfield, no questions asked. And just for a team to move up and give Ottawa the chance to get that number 1 center, like, guaranteed, is such a blessing. It's ridiculous. So yeah, the Sens now solidify at least 2/3 of a top line with Brady Tkachuk and Quentin Byfield being there. And they're really not too many pieces off, right? Drake Batherson did play on the right wing last year, and I think he does have potential to be at least a top 6 player. I'm not sure about the first line, but I know for a fact top 6. So Quentin Byfield off the board at 3, leaving Detroit with not their ideal situation, but nothing to complain about. Detroit will be very happy at 4. So pick number 4, Detroit. On a lot of the mock drafts I've seen, especially from Sens fans, and a lot of the stuff I've seen, I've seen a lot of people linking the Sens to Lucas Raymond, and most recently there was an interview where Raymond said one of the teams he's interviewed the most was with the Sens, which of course it makes sense. It really would be nice, like a destined to be. He's from the same hometown as Alfie Gothberg or whatever, and if he was to come to the Sens, it would be fantastic. But it just seems too good to be true for Detroit to pass up on a player like Raymond. So he's very obviously the 4th best player in the draft, and it's closer than you'd think, to be honest, with the top 3 being talked about so much. Raymond has really gone under the radar, and no doubt he is the 4th best player. And for me to sit here and say, like, oh, Detroit will grab Perfetti because Perfetti's from Detroit, like, I don't think Yzerman thinks like that. Yzerman is a bit of a savage GM, right? He'll do what it takes to make a team. He knows what it takes to make a team. He was there in Tampa Bay, and definitely a part of the core there, like Yzerman putting together that team. And I really think he's a no BS GM, where he's not going to like pick one player and kind of like simp for them, you know? He's not going to pick Perfetti because Perfetti would have a big smile on his face draft day, right? He's there to win. Yzerman is a winner. He's an excellent GM. And I think he'll recognize that Raymond really is the 4th best player and pick him up. So for the Sens to think that they'd be walking out of this draft with Byfield Raymond is a bit not self-centered, but just you're not thinking about other teams, right? It's a bit of a homer mindset to think, oh, well, Detroit will grab our players so we can be over the moon at 5. You know, I think Wings fans are going to look back in this draft and not be as angry. They're not going to think about dropping from dead last embarrassment team to 4th because of what Raymond will bring to their team. Okay, so at the number 5 pick. Now this one is definitely the most talked about because with the top 3, you can only say so much about 3 guys, right? You can swap 2 and 3 as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's 2 different scenarios and there's nothing else. So 5 opens up so many doors, and I've kind of waited a little bit for this mock draft because there's so much information coming out, and you don't know what's a smokescreen, what's real information. I've seen athletic reporters giving their 2 cents, you know, oh, I heard this about the Sens, I heard this about the Sens. I think if the Sens are truly doing their job, if they're doing their due diligence, right, this is their Christmas. This is Trent Mann's Christmas. This is Pierre Dorian's Christmas. Like, they're not going to lay the cards on the table for you. Anything you see is, as far as I'm concerned, bait, right? It's all bait. I've seen Jake Sanderson linked to the Sens. I've seen Jack Quinn, which makes a lot more sense. I've seen Melnick wants Askarov, and then Trent Mann came on the TSN radio show, and he talked about the 3 right wings in the draft, right? He talked about Raymond, Quinn, and Jarvis. And you have to really put yourself in their shoes and think, all right, so this is his livelihood, this is his job, this is everything. Like, this draft really means everything to him. Drafting in general does, but so what's the reason why he's bringing up these right wingers? And I really do think the reason why is to throw a curveball in the mix, right? So if Detroit is thinking of Raymond, right, that's probably their pick, and it's the best pick. But if you throw 2 other right wingers in the mix and say, well, there's this guy and this guy, now Detroit is thinking between 3 right wings, whereas they should only be thinking about Raymond or possibly Drysdale, right? But you're throwing players in the mix, you're throwing names out there, and you're just trying to confuse the team in front of you. That's all you're doing. There's no one outside of the Sens boardroom who knows their pick, at 5 at least. And I think the Sens, with the most recent interviews and kind of throwing names out there. They're just trying to confuse Detroit, and as long as Stevie Y sees through it, which this is my team, right? So this is like I'm truly not a homer. I just love hockey, so I think they're trying to confuse Stevie Y. I don't think he'll buy it, and I think he takes Raymond at 4, and at 5 that leaves the Sens with who I think they will grab and who makes the most sense. And so most recently I saw Craig Button talk about in a draft like this deep, you have to look at the player and assume let's say you assume every player is a hit, right? For what they are, for what they're presented as, for what you see them as, like, oh, Jack Quinn, 30-goal scorer, for what they are, you have to look and be like, okay, so let's say he's a hit. What do we need, right? And I think out of value in this draft, I think the Sens will end up taking Jamie Drysdale, right? And I've seen a lot of people kind of up and down on Drysdale. A lot of the reports on him, or at least the amateur reports, are just completely inaccurate. Like, they're not even like, it's like they're not even doing their research or due diligence. They're just kind of like reading what someone else has said, and they're not actually looking at what Drysdale can do, right? So whenever someone says power play a QB, Jamie Drysdale, he's really not a power play QB. He can pass the puck and he can make a play, but one of his weaknesses was being a power play quarterback, and it's one of the things people were worried about with him. He excels in defensive play, and in the same way that Hughes and Makar can skate their way out of trouble, he's that same way. And he's also good on the breakout, on the rush, because he has speed, because he has a good first pass. And I think a lot of the other parts of his game, so the power play QBing and his shot, are looked down upon, but I think those will develop. So a lot of the reports I'm seeing are just like inaccurate, right? They're not even looking at what he is. And so if we take a look at his weaknesses, they're not sure if he can power play a QB, right? Doesn't matter. Thomas Chabot has that covered on the first line. Okay, so let's say they wanted to do the second line power play QB. It also doesn't matter because Eric Brandstrom is eventually going to have his own power play. He can probably quarterback a power play better than Drysdale, right? So those are two knocks on his game, right? And then the other knock was his offensive upside. Well, I don't know if you need it, because if Drysdale is somewhere in the future playing with Chabot, right? Chabot is like a 60-70 point defenseman on a good year. So do you need your other defender to be producing that much more if Chabot's putting up numbers like that? No, I think you need a player to cover Chabot. And I really do think with a Drysdale-Chabot pairing, we could have a filthy, like, Werenski-Jones tier pairing. And especially with the shortage of right-hand defensemen, the shortage of elite right-hand defensemen, there's really not too many in the NHL. It's one of the most valued positions right now. You can ask the Maple Leafs about that. And I just think people aren't really seeing Drysdale for his true potential because they're getting so caught up with the forwards. But just because a year is deep in forwards doesn't mean that the first defenseman you take will be a bust, right? So I've seen a lot of people say Drysdale, if he was in the 2019 draft, would be a number 3, number 2 guy, right? Battling for the number 2 spot with Kakko, which I think is accurate. I think it's very accurate. That's just how deep this draft is, right? And so Drysdale's been at the number 5 spot all year. And it would make sense if you heard nothing of the Sens liking him, because why would they put that information out there, right? If their 2 guys are Raymond, Drysdale, you shouldn't hear a thing about that, right? So I do think Drysdale is the pick, because how else are you going to get a right shot top pairing defenseman? When else can you get that? You're not trading for it. Ever since Seth Jones, there's not been a trade for one. I guess Subban, but Subban's on the second side of his career, right? He's on the later side. So I think Drysdale is the pick based on value, based on like what he can do for a team. Probably playing 25 minutes a night, maybe even more. Like, him and Chabot are going to absolutely just run the show on the back end there. And I think with the Sens having so many second rounders this year, that they're going to find their stud forward. Like, I don't think the move is to take Jack Quinn at 5 or another winger at 5, or another forward who they can probably get in the second round just by sheer picks alone. Like, they're going to find a goal scorer somewhere there. They're going to find offensive talent in that second round. And that's where we have the advantage here with those second round picks. So I don't think the forwards is the move for the second pick. I do think Drysdale is the move. And also, I have seen people say, what about next year's draft, right? Like, so if you're the Sens, do you skip on Drysdale because next year's draft is defense heavy and you can assume that you can grab one next year? I think in the NHL, the National Hockey League, you can't make assumptions like that. I think every GM truly believes at the start of the year that, like, this could be their year, unless it's a very obvious rebuild year. But even then, they'll still ice a semi-competitive roster because they want to see what their good pieces look like, right? They want to see what they're building around for the future. So no team goes into the season knowing they want to tank or wanting to tank. And I think for that reason, like, I can't see Pierre Dorion or any GM for that matter building their team around next year's draft, like, because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know how low they'll pick. They're very much kind of like rolling with the punches, right? Whatever falls under their lap, they'll deal with then, whatever cards are dealt. But they're not pre-planning that much. And I think, like, hoping for a defenseman next year, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make too much sense. I think the Sens will be a lot more competitive next year than we think. So there's no guarantee they'll be bottom 10 next year. It is likely they'll be a middle pack bottom 10 team, but there's no guarantee. And you can't build your team around things that aren't a guarantee, right? You build it around what you know you have today. All right, that's it for the draft. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. And thanks for watching if you made it this far. I'll see you guys on draft day.